We just witnessed another historical IPO around crypto, obviously the first one being Coinbase, now Circle. We actually have here Justin Circle raised $1.1 billion in IPO at $31 a share, now trading over $81 on the New York Stock Exchange, over 2.5x above offer price. So this was definitely a big one. And what ended up happening from this was Uber, another very large company that everyone is aware of, announces it's exploring stablecoins as a payment method. We are now watching as stablecoins become more and more accelerated. And this is definitely something that I think everyone should be paying attention to. But what if I told you guys that there is something happening and it involves XRP and the XRPL and trillions of dollars, and stablecoins are a big piece of that move? Let's go over here to JD Vance saying stablecoins are a force multiplier for the US dollar. In this administration, we do not think that stablecoins threaten the integrity of the United States dollar. Quite the opposite. Dollar peg stablecoins is only going to help the American economy, and it's going to help the American dollar. Check it out.
In this administration, we do not think that stablecoins threaten the integrity of the United States dollar. Quite the opposite. In fact, we view them as a force multiplier of our economic might. Dollar-pegged stablecoins, particularly once Genius is enacted, is only going to help the American economy, and it's only going to help the American dollar. In this administration.
So yeah, obviously stablecoins are the big thing to focus on. It's a much bigger deal than a lot of people are actually, being told. And when we think about this, it's not just about, all right, yeah, treasuries are going to, be bought up by all of these stablecoin issuers. It's not just about that. It's actually a much bigger deal than that. But let's go over here to Bill Hegarty, which also outlined what JD Vance did say, which is, we're optimistic that the Senate is able to move quickly on passing a Clean Genius Act, and for the House to follow up and do the same. And of course, once that happens, our great President Trump will sign it into law the minute it comes across the desk. The Genius Act is potentially days away from being, fully passed through. It could take a little bit more time, but I do think that we are getting very close to this becoming fully passed through. Listen closely to what JD Vance is saying, though.
Let me be emphatic on one other point. In this administration, we do not think that stablecoins threaten the integrity of the United States dollar. And let me be emphatic on one other point. In this administration, we do not think that stablecoins threaten the integrity of the United States dollar. Quite the opposite. In fact, we view them as a force multiplier of our economic might. Dollar-pegged stablecoins, particularly once Genius is enacted, is only going to help the American economy, and it's only going to help the American dollar. So, again, we're optimistic that the Senate is able to move quickly on passing a Clean Genius Act, and for the House to follow up and do the same. And of course, once that happens, our great President Trump will sign it into law the minute it comes across his desk.
So yeah, listen, when we think about what's happening here around the Genius Act, this is that fuel that will light the fire that will spread so fast in the US. But when we think about this, right, what's the next step? Well, let's go over here. So the debt is now being, focused on in a big way. Obviously, it was always focused on, but now we are closing in on $37 trillion. Now, on top of this, we also have the interest cost on US federal debt being focused on as well. And if we take a step back, look at this 10-year difference. 2014, $416 billion. 2024, $1.13 trillion. In 10 years, we went up by over $700 billion in interest cost. This is not sustainable. On top of that, Elon Musk, which we already know about the Trump and Elon drama, he's been sounding the alarm on debt for quite some time. We have here the big ugly bill will increase the deficit to $2.5 trillion. We have a $2 trillion deficit. It keeps growing. Our interest payments are higher than our Defense Department budget. Check it out.
I think that we've got this enormous federal budget deficit, and it's a $2 trillion deficit. It keeps growing. Our interest payments are higher than our Defense Department budget. That's I think was the real wake-up call for me, was looking at seeing that the interest payments to national debt exceeded the Defense Department budget, and that was only growing over time, which meant if we didn't do something about this, then there won't be any money for anything. We'll just be servicing debt.
And you know how to read an income statement, and you know how to read a balance sheet. You've had some business experience. I'm kidding, but
yeah,
you know about this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, really, I just don't want America to go bankrupt.
So it's a call to action. You're hearing a call to action.
Yeah.
You giving up your other stuff? I mean, how are you running your other businesses?
With great difficulty. Yeah, I mean.
But there's no turning back, you're saying?
I'm just here trying to make government more efficient, eliminate waste and fraud, and so far we're making good progress.
So yeah, I mean, listen, when we think about what's really going on here, debt is beyond turning back, right? We're not going to be able to fix this. So what do we do? Well, we know back in February, the big thing was President Trump says Doge may found fraud in U.S. Treasuries. He said, we may have less debt than we thought. Is this a push towards blockchain technology for U.S. government spending? And even here we have, wow, this would be historic, but both Elon Musk and Coinbase's CEO have now proposed putting all U.S. spending on blockchain. This means 6.9 trillion of U.S. spending per year would be placed on a decentralized ledger. What does this mean? Now, basically, the main thing about this would be that we would be able to track and trace all of the spending, and we would be able to account for anything that is fraudulent. But let's actually think about what's going on here. Debt. We go over here to this post from Solo Sway, Ali G XRP. Now, he did put out about 3 posts. Number 1, we have Trump. Who knows, we might pay off our $35 trillion debt. Hand them a little crypto check and wipe out our $35 trillion. Now, this is not the way that we're going to wipe out the debt. We're not just going to be able to hand over a crypto check. It's just ridiculous to say the least. But this is what he did say. I'll play the clip.
Who knows, maybe we'll pay off our $35 trillion, hand him a little crypto check, right? We'll hand him a little Bitcoin and wipe out our $35 trillion. But how do you...
So yeah, I mean, it's just a ridiculous statement. That's not exactly how it's going to be wiped out. The case here is tokenization. We have here tokenized US debt, the engine behind the next wave of stablecoins. Tokenizing US debt means turning government bonds into digital assets that are easier to buy and sell, even in small amounts and from anywhere in the world. This opens the door for stablecoins backed by US debt, where issuers earn interest on the bonds while users get fast global payments. The dual incentive drives demand for both stablecoins and the underlying treasuries. It doesn't erase the 35 trillion, but by increasing demand and lowering borrowing cost, it makes the debt easier to sustain over time. And then also, ROUSD puts US debt on chain. XRP makes it liquid.
We have broad agreement, Kaylee, with respect to the content of this stablecoin legislation, My Genius Act. And this is going to, I think, take us into the 21st century in terms of upgrading our payment systems. It's going to have very desirable effects, taking the U.S. economy into the digital assets arena, keeping innovation here, lowering risk here in America, and putting in place guardrails that will protect consumers, because every one of these stablecoins will be backed up dollar for dollar with U.S. treasuries. Very positive outcome here. We've got very strong support.
And yeah, this is exactly how we move debt on chain. This is how we move debt on chain. We back it with liquid projects and liquid tokens. On top of that, we do open the door for DeFi use cases around borrowing incentives, lending incentives as well. this could definitely make debt easier to sustain rather than just having it continuing to balloon to astronomical levels, and the interest cost on that also ballooning in a huge way. We also have over here from Chad Steinkraber tokenizing the US debt, $35 trillion on chain. And here's the breakdown of that, where we just read over here. And yeah, this is where I do suspect that we are headed towards. And you know what's crazy about this? Let's go back in time to January of this year, where Wall Street will move trillions of debt instruments onto the blockchain. Matthew Lin Y put this out. XRP is one of the first networks to see value from the bond markets. OUSG, an institutional grade product backed by tokenized US Treasuries and BlackRock's Build Fund, represents a natural fit for blockchain purpose built for institutional adoption. See how Ondo and Ripple are powering. This is the initiative, right? The long-term global potential for security tokens is in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. Here we have global potential by area, real estate, debt, derivatives, stock market, and Bitcoin. Of course, when we think about, debt itself, I think the debt market is actually up to about $300 trillion now. It will be tokenized. Everything will be tokenized. Debt is not a different market, okay? So when we think about what's actually going on here, XRP is already being tapped in on multiple, tokenized debt initiatives. Also, if we go back to October of last year, private equity firm Aurum launches a $1 billion equity and debt tokenized fund on the XRP Ledger network with Zonix. Guys, it's already happening. When we think about what's really happening around the traditional markets, the awareness around how debt is getting to these unsustainable levels, which people have been talking about for years now, is finally being focused on. And I think that it's being focused on, and I think that the alarm is being sounded simply because we have the solution in front of us now. We are going to be seeing stablecoins and blockchain itself being tapped in a huge way. We've been hearing about it now for months. And now with this huge eruption of Elon and Trump arguing all over X and talking, back and forth about nonsense, there is a few things that are being addressed that really kind of spotlight the growing need to tap into blockchain and tokenization initiatives. We know everything's going to be tokenized. They could definitely wipe out debt in a huge way. I don't think that that's going to be the case. I think that this is probably the most logical, step for, the debt. I think that we are going to see the door open up for stablecoins being backed by US debt to be, borrowed against, lent, and this will definitely be a huge move in the right direction to not just make debt, sustainable over time, but it will also provide that solution to this massive debt balloon expanding and expanding and expanding, waiting for it to pop. So stablecoins, the XRP Ledger, Ripple, ROUSD, all of these things have something in common. We're already starting to see stablecoin initiatives launching on the XRP Ledger in a huge way outside of ROUSD, right? Brazil is going crazy with stablecoins on the XRP Ledger. We know the Euro stablecoins are becoming a reality on the XRP Ledger as well. The UK is starting to move on, pound stablecoins, which I do suspect we'll probably see one or two of those on the XRP Ledger. The yen, all of these stablecoin initiatives are just continuing to become more and more prevalent. And again, we go back to Circle. This is a very big accelerated push that already started to make a lot of noise, with even Uber announcing plans to explore stablecoins. This is going to become a common thing. Stablecoin announcements are now, happening almost every other week. I do think that the stablecoin market has now become very, very big. It's now to the point where it's impossible to ignore, 1.1% of the global money supply, and it's only going to become much bigger. We are now seeing the traditional financial system flooding on chain, and debt. The debt market is 100% something that we need to focus on, because it's almost at $37 trillion just around US debt. The debt market itself is over $300 trillion. That's going to be tokenized, just like everything else of value. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely have a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord on the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.